and Schefter's going to call in a second. I cannot be more excited. I've known him forever. He was on the Michigan Daily when I was on the Michigan Daily at the University of Michigan back in the late 80s. And then when the network was searching for its first ever true information man, he was the guy. Worked with him for so many years. And he also pulled off the greatest prank. Speaking of pranks, which we had the guys, the Tenderloins from Impractical Jokers, pull a prank on Chris Cooley. And he pulled the greatest prank on me and Mariucci and Fran Charles, who was the co-anchor of NFL Network at the time.
The franchise.
But we were pulling pranks as well. At the Hall of Fame every year in Canton, Ohio, there's a place called the Glenmore Country Club and Inn, or hotel or whatever. And it's one of these old overlook hotel-looking type places, okay? And they had this piano on the second floor, this beautiful piano on the second floor. And at times, you know, we get in a couple of days before, all of us at the NFL Network, and we would be at the Glenmore facilities, and a few of us would get served, and over and over. And late at night, we came up with the idea one year of taking the piano, which was on wheels, and wheeling it in front of somebody's door and pushing it up against the door, and they wake up and there's a piano. And the first year we did it to Steve Mariucci, because Mooch went to sleep early. And we pulled it on Mooch. And the next day we wake up and the piano's still in the hallway and it's slightly pushed out a little bit that he had to wake up and just open the door and there's a piano directly in front of him. So the next year we go and he's like, let's do it to somebody. He wanted to do it to somebody. So we went there and we did it to Adam Schefter. We did it to Adam Schefter. And there's a photograph that I put in my book, Total Access, A Journey to the Center of the NFL Universe. There it is. That's Chris Wirtz on the left, NFL Network producer, Mike Connor at the time. There's Fran Charles, Bardia Shireas, who's with Fox Sports. Look at Mooch in the back. He's so proud of himself. And you can see we're having a great time. Schefter had to put in front of, we did this 2 years in a row to Schefter. And then 1 year, Schefter decides to, one year we wake up the next morning and I get a letter in an envelope shoved underneath the door. And we have the letter. We're showing it to the radio audience. We're showing it on TV. It's a letter saying, in regards to the furniture that was moved early this morning by yourself and several other guests of our club that will be receiving a similar letter. Unfortunately, the piano that was damaged was from the original piano from Brunerdale Catholic Seminary, which Glenmore went to great lengths to refurbish and restore. This person was the director of security at the Glenmore, saying, each of you will be charged equally for the repairs. At this time, I can only guess that the cost will be several $1,000s. This was on official Glenmore stationery, sent to me, Mariucci, and Fran Charles, shoved under the doors when we woke up. We then go to work that day.
You're a little panicked.
Panicked? We were panicked. Freaking out. Lo and behold, is he on the phone?
Mr. Schefter's on.
Who is the one who went to Daniel Kirby of Glenmore Management and said, make up this letter? Who was that?
Let me tell you something. Fran Charles was panicked in the car. Panicked as we were driving over to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I called my agent. I don't know what to do. Oh, my God, we're in trouble. Gonna have to pay for this. I can't believe it. Mooch never really bought it. Fran Charles bought it hook, line, and sinker.
So did I. So did I. Now, you went to security. You said, you got to do this for me? You got to, I mean, yeah. I know you have information. You've got ins, Adam, but everywhere? Everywhere?
Yeah, that's what happened. Went down to the front desk. I said, I need your help with this. Can you come up with a letter that the piano is damaged? You got it recently at a nearby Catholic church. And I will say this, what he did exceeded my wildest dreams.
The best part is Brunerdale Catholic Seminary is a real place, too. Like,
you nailed it.
This had layers to it.
You nailed it.
And you know the great part about that was? I actually was laughing so hard at the idea of what I told the front desk and Daniel Kirby. I went down to go work out. I'm cracking up. I sometimes, very rarely with me, you tell a joke that you find to be humorous. I don't tell too many of them, Rich. I live in a very type A, serious type world. But I was so amused at myself for coming up with this. Yes. I went down to the hotel gym. And who was in the hotel gym when I walked in there?
Yeah.
But Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods.
The PGA champion.
I'm like, you got to hear this story. And I told him the story because he knew Fran Charles from having, when Fran worked at the Golf Channel.
Right.
So Tiger got a kick out of it. I got more of a kick out of it than Tiger did, but it was still fun.
So that was Tiger approved, that letter and prank. Tiger
Absolutely, yes.
Personally, isn't that incredible, man? Life is unbelievable. Adam Schefter, a longtime friend from the worldwide leader in sports, part of NFL Insiders. Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN, and part of my competition, Sunday NFL Countdown, 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on the Worldwide Leader on Sundays. Adam, let's get into some of this stuff that's going on in the NFL. The breakdown, the current openings at head coaches and handicap when you think these decisions might be made and filled by whom, Adam?
Rich, I think it's pretty simple. We got 3 openings right now. And I think that we look at the Atlanta Falcons first and foremost. And I think everything points to Dan Quinn, the Seahawks defensive coordinator, winding up in Seattle. He has to be the favorite there. He is the favorite there. They have Terrell Austin on the radar. They have other people they could always turn to. But the fact of the matter is that Dan Quinn was always going to be in play in one of these places. And it looks like it's the Atlanta Falcons. The Denver Broncos would like to talk to him. The Chicago Bears have talked to him. But the Falcons have the best quarterback of any team remaining, the best quarterback situation, I should say, because Peyton Manning may come back and play, and he's a great quarterback. But, again, if you want to come into a situation, it's nice to get Matt Ryan at the age he is. So, to me, Dan Quinn, ultimately in the end, barring something unforeseen, I think he winds up in Atlanta. Chicago is in a situation where John Fox was in there yesterday. And a lot of people think that John Fox is a done deal. And eventually it may get done. I don't think it's done yet. I don't think it's close to being done yet. I think they're doing a lot of due diligence. I think they also like Terrell Austin. I think they also like Doug Marrone. And the one thing that we know about Ryan Pace is he's going to be very deliberate, very methodical in making a selection. And as obvious as the choice of John Fox might be, ultimately, it might get done, but don't be surprised if it doesn't. And then we have the Denver Broncos, and I think obviously they've spoken to Adam Gase already about that job. He would be a candidate for that job. They'd like to speak to Dan Quinn. I don't think they'll be able to shake him loose, though they'll certainly try, and John Elway can be very persuasive in that regard. And then, of course, the obvious candidate would be Gary Kubiak, the Ravens offensive coordinator, who has previously said that he does not have an interest in interviewing for a job nor leaving Baltimore. But, look, if there's one city and one franchise that's going to tempt Gary Kubiak, it's going to be the Denver Broncos. He raised his family there. He grew up there, raised his family there. He coached there. He played there. John Elway was his roommate in training camp there. That's the one place that I think could tempt Gary Kubiak to leave Baltimore. And so I think Kubiak is in play in Denver. I think Fox and others are in play in Chicago, and I think Quinn is in play in Atlanta.
Adam Schefter of ESPN joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So names I didn't hear, Shanahan. So Mike Shanahan's on the outside looking in when it's all said and done?
Well, Mike Shanahan, I think, had long talks, spoke to the 49ers yesterday morning on the day of their hire again, clearly down to a finalist, and Mike had extensive talks with the Oakland Raiders. And I think Mike is in a situation where, I don't know if they offered him the job, did or didn't, but he's going to be very careful here, and he wants to make sure that if and when he comes back that it's set up the way that he wants it to be, that it's just the right way. And it's a situation where, to me, it just didn't work out for him at this point in time. So we'll see if something pops up. Unexpected things happen, but right now, the way it looks, it doesn't look like he's going to get one of these head coaching jobs.
Yeah, and Doug Marrone, who left Buffalo, and everybody thought, well, that means he must have someplace in mind already set up. So he left a coaching job. He did get a $4 million check for it, but it looks like Doug Marrone's not going to wind up with a head coaching gig after all.
I'm not ready to say that just yet, Rich.
Okay.
Again, I think he's in play in Chicago. I think he's a candidate. And if Chicago does go to John Fox or Terrell Austin, then we could have that conversation. But I think when people look at Doug Marrone, they say, hey, boy, did he mess up here if he doesn't get a head coaching job. I don't think that, with all due respect to Buffalo. Like, you're leaving a place where there's new ownership, where there's some uncertainty about the structure of the organization. You don't know how that's going to go. There are definitely questions about who's playing quarterback. You don't have a first-round draft pick, and you're putting $4 million in your pocket. So if Doug Marrone never becomes a head coach again, which I don't think is going to be the case, then he made a colossal mistake. But I think at some point, whether it's this year or next year or the year after, somebody's going to hire Doug Marrone.
Adam Schefter of ESPN joining me here. What happened with Harbaugh in San Francisco? As you know, I have absolutely no problems with, and neither do you from your Michigan days, that Harbaugh wound up in Ann Arbor. But what did happen there between the Niners and Jim Harbaugh, Adam?
I just think there was so much bad feeling and ill will built up over time and so much resentment. And I think sometimes we get a lot of pride that gets in the way. There's failed contract negotiations. The 49ers went to him last summer tried to redo his deal. He didn't even counter at that point in time. So I think in his mind, he's moving on. They know he's moving on. They don't feel good about it. He doesn't feel good about it. And it just continues to spiral from there. I don't know if there's any one spot that you look to and say this is the reason that the relationship soured and went south. I just think all along it was destined to go in that direction, and it was really destined to go in that direction maybe from the time they made a quarterback decision and went with Colin Kaepernick, and that started a certain thing with certain people wanting certain quarterbacks and others not. And then we had the failed talks with the Cleveland Browns where Jim Harbaugh's name was in play for a potential trade, and then there's no contract extension, and others are making more money, and just a whole lot of reasons for him to leave there and for them to make a change. And it's unfortunate because I think it's a great organization. I think he's a great football coach, and the fact that two sides could not figure out a way to make it work, I think, doesn't really benefit anybody other than the University of Michigan.
Yeah, Adam, you work with Mort, as we all know, and he is, like Billy Preston was the unofficial Beatle. He was the fourth Beatle. He's the fourth Manning, technically.
Yeah, that's fairly accurate.
I think it is. So what do you think, and what are you hearing about Peyton Manning and where he is in his decision-making process and where he works into John Elway saying he's going to be part of the coaching decision-making there? I mean, put these Peyton Manning puzzle pieces together for me.
I think everybody's getting a little carried away on the Peyton Manning thing. I get it. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest players in franchise history or NFL history, but you can't rush a decision in mid-January that isn't going to be made till February, March, April. When I covered John Elway back in Denver, when I was a newspaper beat writer, it was a repeated question at the tail end of his career every year. And every year you'd wait and wait and wait. And sometimes these players, these men need to get away and give their bodies and minds a break from the game. And when John Elway made the decision to retire, he did not do that until the middle of April of 1999. Mm-hmm. And even then, he wanted to come back but recognized that his body simply would not allow him to do it. And as we all know, when you first get into this game, you go play the game, you're sore on Monday, and then after a few years, that soreness lasts till Wednesday, and then eventually it's Friday, and then eventually it's to the point when you're in your mid-30s that the soreness just never goes away, and you play the full season being sore. And that's what John Elway was dealing with at the end, and that's what drove him from the game. And Peyton Manning will be 39 years old next season, and it's a question of whether he believes that he can get himself up physically and mentally. I'm not ready to say that he is or isn't coming back. The fourth member of the Manning family isn't ready to say whether he is or isn't coming back yet. And the Broncos have to go about their coaching decision in a way as if Peyton Manning is irrelevant to a certain extent. You've got to go hire the best coach for your franchise and hope that it appeals to Peyton Manning. You're certainly not going to hire somebody that doesn't like, but you have to figure if they're going to hire a good coach, somebody like a Gary Kubiak, that Peyton Manning would be in favor of that. Now, Peyton Manning, it's a similar thing where the coach is not going to make or break your decision. If you want to come back, you're going to come back unless you really dislike the coach, which is something the Broncos probably aren't going to be doing. So I think people are connecting their coaching search with his decision more than they probably should. The two will take care of each other, and they'll wipe each other out. And his decision, I would think, would just come at a later point. The only deadline on that decision,
yes,
he's got a roster bonus that they have to pay before the third day of the league year. Okay? And if you want, if you have to, you can always push those dates back. So that's the only time crunch that's on both sides, where it gets to the start of the league year, which this year begins March 10th, and there's a contractual decision that they have to make. But, again, there's no reason that both sides couldn't sit back and say, you know what, we're going to push off this decision to April 15th, tax day, and then we'll reconvene at that point in time.
Speaking of April 15th, this is my last question to you, Schefter, because I want you back on. I don't know how.
We're done. The
Hey, listen.
comes down, and we're done after 8 minutes.
You called it that, Wall, not me, sir. I want you back on. I'll just put it this way, but just in case.
I was on the free and liberal side of Germany here. Okay, like I was on the side that's basking in its independence and freedom.
Oh my goodness. All right, then let me just, without the caveats, just ask you this question.
Yes.
Because April 15th is the day that Adrian Peterson's suspension is supposedly going to get lifted, maybe.
Yeah.
The off-season story of 2015, or as you know, the non-playing season, as we call it. There's no such thing as an off-season.
Yeah.
The story of 2015, is it an L.A. move? Is it Peterson, what happens with him? With Cutler? Is it Peyton Manning's whereabouts? Give me the number one story, crystal ball it,
Wow.
of the offseason, Adam Schefter.
Well, Rich, It's probably not as sexy, but I guess we're going to see huge contracts doled out to Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson, right?
Okay.
That's probably not going to be the one that gets fans going, though. But when Andrew Luck's deal comes in at $25 million, or Russell Wilson wins the Super Bowl and his deal comes in at $25 million a year, those will be big headlines. The Adrian Peterson situation, of course, hangs over everybody. Ray Rice may resurface at some point, which will be a big deal. Look, the fact of the matter is, in these days, everything is a big deal. Okay,
yeah.
Whatever the day of the week is, I always brace and prepare myself for the first 3-4 days of free agency, and I know that those 3-4 days are going to be my 3-4 busiest days of the year. Except this year, with this coaching search being as long and as dragged out as it has been, with all the openings coming, it has felt like the first 3 days of free agency for the last 3 weeks. It's been crazy, constant, and it doesn't let up. And so when you say what's the biggest storyline, it'll be whatever story is breaking that day, because we all will make it into the biggest story that day.
That's the way it works. Hey, listen, Adam Schefter, you are 1 in a million, which is now why you have 3.4 million followers at Adam Schefter. I remember when I was telling you, got to go with your name. You remember that when you had 0 Twitter followers, and I'm like, you got to go Adam Schefter, and somebody was sitting on your name?
You helped bring me a TV, which is true. You helped bring me an NFL Network, which I probably balked at doing. I definitely balked at doing. You helped get me involved in Twitter. You have set me on the path to freedom. You have brought me over the Berlin Wall, and I thank you for doing all of that.
I love you, Adam Schefter. I don't care who knows it.
We'll be in touch.
Take care,
pleasure.
man. There you go. That's Adam Schefter of ESPN.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.